Well, after the weekend break, we are back this morning with your program, Good Morning Sierra Leone, the program that always starts your day with news, views, comments, and analysis on everything that is happening around you. I'm Sheku Sumaila, teaming up with
Daphne Zainab Kamal. Good morning and welcome to this edition of Good Morning Sierra Leone. A result on debates conducted for parliamentary candidates on governance issues during the past elections is to be presented to the public tomorrow in a workshop that would be held at the Jana venue in Freetown. The debate was conducted by Search for Common Ground with support from the International Growth Center. Well, for more on the issue, we have Rachel Glennerster from the International Growth Center. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks. Great to be here.
What's all this about, this result?
So we were looking at ways to strengthen the link between members of Parliament and their constituencies, and we worked with Search for Common Ground, who, as you know, does a lot of programs with MPs, and they held debates between the different candidates for members of Parliament, and they videotaped those, and then they went out into villages and set up a screen at the polling station and screened these debates, so local people could come and see, and often there were hundreds of people who came to watch these debates. It was a great atmosphere at the debates, people cheering on different sides. But so we were doing research to find out what was the effect of these debates, and we did exit polls, and we interviewed people who'd watched the debates, and we also interviewed people who were in areas that hadn't seen the debate, so we could see what the effect of the debate was. And we found that people who hadn't seen debates really had very little information about their MP candidates. So they knew very little. Many of them couldn't name the MP candidates. They didn't know what roles MPs were meant to play. But where there had been these debate screenings, people were very interested. They learnt a lot, and they remembered that long after the debate. So at the time of the election, they could still remember a lot about the candidates.
Let me ask this. Now that you are coming out with the results, but what's the essence of it all? Because we know that there may be some parliamentarians who did not win the debate, but they have won the seat in parliament. What's the essence of this?
So it's interesting because winning the debate really had a big influence on whether people voted for you. So sometimes people think, here everyone just votes for the person that they traditionally vote for. But this research showed that people, once they know about the candidates, they're willing to change their vote based on what they find out.
Do you think so?
Was it successful all over the country?
Well, we worked in 14 constituencies. It was a pilot to see how this worked. Okay. So what we'd love to see is now showing these very positive results would be that at the next election that there'll be debates across the country.
So is it not like a sabotage to some of the parliamentarians who did not win the debate?
So I think it's encouragement for people for good people to come forward for MP candidates, because if there are debates, then people can tell how good a candidate you are.
But then, Rachel, you agree with me that yes, Ogetki is part of the game. It's part of politicking. You talk to convince people. But then we've seen politicians who are very good at talking. They will talk, they will convince people. Right. But when it comes to actual implementation, it's a different ball game. So do you think winning a debate, is sufficient enough reason for that person to be voted for?
I agree that being a good orator is only one thing, but that's not the only thing that I think these debates conveyed. One important thing is MPs were asked to go on record for very specific things. So they were asked, will you vote for the gender equity bill, for example? And most of the MP candidates said that they would vote. It was support for the gender equity bill amongst the voters was very strong. as was transparency of the constituency facilitation fund. So the idea that the money that's given to MPs should be transparent, they should have to account for it. And so in the debates, people were asked, do you support these different positions? And members of parliament had to publicly commit to their positions, and that allowed people to decide how they were going to vote. We saw people changing their vote based on these policy stances. So now we are watching those MPs and we're seeing, are they going to deliver on the promises they made in the debates?
Are they?
Well, this we have to see. We've recently interviewed the MPs who were part of the debates and asked them what they've been doing, and we're now going to the field and asking their constituents and saying, what's your impression of the MPs? Are they following up on the promises they made?
How often do you meet them? Because it's like you said, it is a pilot project, and there are times it's just a one-off thing. Yeah, you go there once, you tell them, okay, are you aware of what is happening? And what are your parliamentarians doing? But then, having done that, you will not go there again probably until the elections come, and probably you've kept them incommunicado for several years. So how consistent?
Right.
Because it is very important.
It is very important, and we see very big differences between MPs. Some of them are going to their constituency a lot and talking to people a lot, and some are not going very often. And this actually links with some other research that we were doing with the Campaign for Good Governance, which we don't have the results for yet, but I think is very important, where we collected information on how well MPs were doing their job, and then feeding that back to see if it influenced whether you won the party symbol next time. But in general, I agree that that there's a big difference between the MPs who are going to their constituents, talking to their constituents a lot, and some aren't. And what we need is something where, it can be MPs who aren't performing.
But earlier
accountable.
you said earlier about now with the debate, with the screening of the debate, there is now alteration in the way people think. They are not changing their minds. Do you think so? When politics in this country, is about party.
Regional.
It's about region.
Tribe.
It's about tribe.
Color.
It's about color. It's about party. People are so fixed. Once it is this party that I support, whatever happens.
If even the
even if they're not
is
doing
not
well,
performing, if even it's not up to the task,
I will continue
then
to
vote
vote,
for him as long as they want the party to stay in power.
So I'm not saying that doesn't exist. Obviously, there's a very strong relationship between the ethnicity and how people vote, but it's not 100% at all. And one of the reasons may be that people don't have any other information other than what party are they from. They don't know anything about the MPs. It's very interesting, at local elections, people are willing to cross party lines. 30% of people will cross party lines to vote for the councillor who they like. And it's much less, party loyalty is much less strong in local councils. And I think one of the reasons is that people know their councillor. They know how well they're working, and if they know something, then they will throw party away. So the question is, can we do that for MPs too? So that they know enough about whether this MP is delivering, will they then be willing to cross party lines?
But then also, we are talking about people voting on
Yes.
party lines, on region, or as the case may be. Because here, when we talk about regions, geopolitics, is always what we talk about here. Because region, okay, the party is having dominance in this particular region. This party is having dominance in this particular region, and it is very difficult, for that bridge, to be to kind of bridge that kind of division. Now, do you have any intention in moving in that direction, trying to let people understand that when you talk about your country, you have to think one, because it is only national cohesion and unity that will fast track even this prosperity that we're talking about.
So my strong belief is that we need to have people voting on policy and not on party, on how well the MP is delivering, not just on their long party loyalty. But I think there is now quite a bit of evidence from this country and other countries that the more people know about what their MP is doing, they're not just some faraway name. That is the way to get people to vote, not based on party, but based on delivering. Because if they don't know anything about whether they're delivering, they just say, I might as well vote for the traditional.
But in as much as, yes, you want the constituents to know, to better understand what governance is all about,
Yeah.
what politics is all about. Do you also kind of engage? Like, for example, now you said there was this debate before during the electioneering period, where MPs were asked questions, as to what they intend to do, if they're elected into the various offices. But then, how often do you engage, the MPs or the would-be MPs?
Right. So one of the things we want to talk about in the workshop tomorrow is this work was about the election, and there's some work following it up. But we really need to do this not just at election time. We need, as you say, we need to have engagement throughout the process, throughout the life of the Parliament, because this is not politics, and accountability shouldn't just be once every few years. So what we'd like to talk about at the workshop is how can we exactly do this in the coming years to continue to engage. Now, I'm a researcher, so it's not so much for me to do it, but we have, I evaluate different approaches. I'm not Sierra Leonean either, but I think we have all the people at the workshop who can be involved. We have civil society and MPs, the National Election Commission, and we also have an NGO who's been very successful at doing exactly this kind of work in India. They've come over from India and they will be talking about their experience and how they've managed to strengthen accountability and the links between voters and MPs in India. So we're hoping to all learn from each other and try and build a much stronger link and a much greater accountability and information flow.
Now, bringing out all this is one approach, and what would you hold the MPs accountable when they don't do what they're promised?
So I think what you should do if an MP doesn't do what they're promised is provide that information to the voters.
Yes, even though you provide the information for them, they will be there till the 5-year is finished.
The other thing, I mean, it depends how how bad they're not delivering, right? I think one route is through the parties, and we're investigating that because parties don't want MPs who don't deliver either. So we've been giving information to parties about these MPs are not delivering. They're very unpopular at home.
So do you go to the people?
So we go to people, we provide information to people, we provide information to parties.
So it is quite a challenging job, because going to the people, telling them to see it as though you want to kind of fear, rebellion, to now say, oh, these white guys, they're inciting our people against us.
No, it's not the white guys. As I say, I'm a researcher. I'm working with the NGO, the Sierra Leonean NGOs are doing all of this. And what we're doing is evaluating whether it works. I'm not going, the International Growth Centre is not going out and doing this. It's Search for Common Ground and Campaign for Good Governance, and all these other groups are doing it. And my job is to evaluate whether it's effective. No, I agree. It's not for me to do.
Because probably you'll be stones will be planted on you. Richard.
Yes.
Democratic good governance.
Yes, I've been coming to Sierra Leone since 2004, and it's been very interesting to see the development of governance and policy over that time. I think one thing I've been particularly interested in watching the local councils developed. That was one of the things that I was most involved in when I first started working here, is working with Decentralization Secretariat and trying to get the councils up and running. And again, as a researcher, we were looking at what's the effect of decentralization. And that's something I'm very interested in, because I think this idea of reaching across the party lines, we sometimes see that more in local government than we see in national government. So that's something I'm quite excited about pursuing further. And it's I was up in Moyamba district just last week, and so it was great to see how the districts have developed and how we see more people coming in and wanting to be councillors, and seeing that councils get stronger.
So, what do you expect? Because tomorrow you'll be presenting the results, at the workshop at the Jala venue. So, what do you expect from? What do you expect of participants who will be there tomorrow?
So, what I'm hoping is that we can talk about how to bring the results into the future. So, what can we do to strengthen the links between MPs and voters? At the next election, I'd love to see more debates. In the meantime, I'd like to see more information going backwards and forwards about how the MPs are doing. MPs talking about what's going on to their constituents. And I think we can learn a lot from the Indian example. It's also a very interesting time with the Freedom of Information Act being passed, because that has been a very powerful tool in other countries for improving accountability and improving those links. So the NGO from India will also talk about their experience using the Freedom of Information Act in India to strengthen accountability.
So during next election, do you plan to do the same thing you did, or would it be before the election so that people get their minds made up about who they're going to vote for?
I think we should do both.
Rather than during the election?
Yeah, I think we should do both. I think we need to work on strengthening the links during the time, and then we also need to have good debates during the election too.
Yeah, because the thing is, if it is done and when people's minds are already made up, I don't think you will the impact will not be felt, much. But if it is done way ahead, I think by the time people get to the elections proper, they will have made up their minds.
So we actually saw 5% of people change their minds solely on the basis of the debate.
Okay.
So even at that late point, you still see people changing.
So even at the eve of election.
Yeah, but even during the election campaign, we saw 5% people change just on the basis of the debate. So, but I think you're right that we could get even more if we started earlier.
Yes. Well, that's all. We hate to go, but then we definitely have to go. It has been Good Morning Sierra Leone, live from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. But then I leave you with the wise words once again. Prayer isn't a spare wheel that you pull out when you are in trouble. Use it as a steering wheel that keeps you on right path throughout life.
I agree.
That is how we say goodbye.
Totally.
Yes, for sure. Yes. That is how we say goodbye in today's edition of the program. Good morning, Sierra Leone. On behalf of the production team, all the camera operators, and even those in the control room, our wonderful guests today, Rachel and Jalikatu, and the production team, including producer Harold Williams. I've been your presenter, Sheku Sumaila, and my co-presenter has been.
I'm Daphne Zainab Kama. Many thanks to our sponsor, Nyami Adum Enterprises of 1 Elo Waterloo Street. Good Morning Sierra Leone returns tomorrow, same time with Darling and Aspiam. Goodbye, have a blessed day.